Welcome to BT Sport Open Mat. I'm Adam Catterall. With me as ever, Nick P, and a man that, who knows, we might see back in the octagon sometime soon, fighting an OG. It is our very own OG, Dan Hardy. How are you, boys? You well?
All good. Glad to be here.
Excited.
I like the way that you're playing that down, mate. I've bigged it up for you, you know what I mean? So we could get stuck into it.
I gave you a cheeky wink. I'm up for it, you know me. Pen in hand, ready to sign.
Listen, we've got a series of sensational fights to talk about, all kicking off for us on September the 19th. It's the final one to come to you from the Apex in Las Vegas before we all jet off to Fight Island in Abu Dhabi for some sensational title fights. But with that in mind, we might be classing this as maybe an eliminator, the main event on September the 19th. We've got the former champion in Tyron Woodley taking on Colby Covington. We've got some sensational fights on the other card, of which we're all going to speak about over the next few minutes or so make sure you stick with us. But first of all, Dan, on this main event, every single time we talk about a Colby Covington fight, it seems to be a grudge match. He doesn't get on with anybody, nobody likes him, he doesn't like anybody, and there's always needle in his fights, which adds to a bit of a spectacle.
It does, absolutely. And obviously, you know, this is one of the reasons why we like watching his fights and why we find him entertaining, is because he is controversial. He does get what people wound up. But at the same time, if you look at the way that Colby Covington fights, having his opponents riled and emotional is suitable for him, you know, especially with someone like Tyron Woodley, who, you know, he does have to control the pace of this fight. If he's emotional and trying to take Colby Covington's head off, and he's already in that state. I mean, what did he say? He's happy to take a point deduction to kick him in the groin. You know, that's a Tyron Woodley that we've not seen before. If he's as angry as that going into the Covington fight, he's going to get worn out quickly.
Nick, regarding the landscape of the welterweight division, you look at these two guys coming off the back of losses, and in Woodley's case, coming off the back of 2 losses. You lose here, either one of these, and they go to the back of the queue because there's a lot of chat of who will be next after Usman versus Burns. And you don't want to be losing this fight, do you?
No, absolutely not. Of course not. Neither of them can afford to take that much of a backward step. And that's what kind of makes it so intriguing. It's a little bit of a crossroads fight because, as you just pointed out then, 2 back-to-back losses. I don't think that's ever happened in Tyron Woodley's absolute life on the wrestling mat or inside an MMA cage. You know, he's never lost 2 back-to-back, never mind 3 back-to-back. And even though he's at 38 years of age now, I think Tyron Woodley wants to prove to the world that he's still pretty fresh. You know, he's not the busiest of fighters, and I think he's ultimately suffered for that. Certainly during his title reign, he suffered for just not being active enough. And he also fell into a little bit of a routine of always waiting and slowing fights down. And, you know, and I think he's continued that with the 2 losses. You know, I just don't think he's active enough inside the octagon. He needs to go back to the old Tyron Woodley. And I think someone like Colby Covington's absolutely made for him in that, you know, they're kind of very similar in their experience on the mats in their wrestling days, but also Colby is, for me, a level below Tyron Woodley when it comes to the striking, if Woodley is active on his feet. So I love this chat from Tyron about him knocking this guy out and about him being active and throwing more shots, because that's exactly what he's going to do. But, you know, in terms of Colby, I don't know about you guys, but this is the quietest he's ever been. I haven't heard a peep out of Colby Covington in the build-up, which concerns me a little bit because maybe he's just realised that he's spent time on the mats with Tyron and he knows he's in a real fight.
Maybe so. But Dan, what I like about Tyron as well, of which he has been dropping a little bit on social media, he's teamed up with Colby's old best mate. He's hanging out with Jorge Masvidal. These boys working together to defeat Colby Covington. Sensational stuff.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And obviously, you know, I mean, having Masvidal in your camp is going to help any fighter, no matter who you're preparing to face. What Woodley needs in his training camp is someone that can keep a real pace on him with wrestling. I mean, the thing is, although Masvidal is going to have insights into how Colby Covington fights and what he's likely to do against Tyron Woodley, he can't probably replicate what Colby Covington can do, especially not against Tyron Woodley. Like Woodley needs a Kamaru Usman, unfortunately for him. He needs some good wrestlers in there. He needs a Justin Gaethje. He needs someone that can really push him and constantly chain those takedowns together. It's the pressure up against the fence that we're going to see in this fight with Woodley. And if I'm Woodley, I'm watching the Robbie Lawler fight against Colby Covington, and I'm basically taking on board those first 2 rounds and expecting that kind of pressure from Colby Covington, because he's not going to stand at range and play boxing with Tyron. That just wouldn't be the smart thing to do.
We saw that, Nick, didn't we, when we got 2 elite level wrestlers in Usman and Covington meeting each other last December, and the fight played out as a kickboxing match on the feet. but you would think that Colby wouldn't necessarily do this time around with Woodley because he's so explosive on the feet.
Absolutely. You know, I think he, as you say, that explosivity that he's got, that one-punch knockout power that Tyron's got. I don't think you quite get that risk with Kamaru, but I think Colby, even going back to his wrestling, though, this is kind of, this is what Tyron Woodley made his name on. He is also a former NCAA Division I wrestler, just like Colby. So it's not like he hasn't got it in the locker. It's just about Tyron getting busy again and just starting to let his hands go and don't let himself get outworked like he has done in the past. And, it does feel like a little bit of a crossroads fight. I like the way he's with Masvidal. Not necessarily, as Dan pointed out, for the technical aspects of what Masvidal brings. I just think Masvidal's aura, though, Masvidal's mentality of the fight game right now, that's what Tyron needs. That little bit of just being able to brush it off. Don't think too far ahead. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the legacy. Don't worry about the fights. Just get in there and do it because you love it. And that's why I believe Jorge Masvidal's enjoyed a real Indian summer, because he's just gone back to doing what he does best, fighting without a care in the world. And if Tyron Woodley can channel a little bit of that energy, then I think we could get a vintage Tyron Woodley performance.
Dan, how does this fight affect the landscape of the welterweight division? We've spoke about what it means for the guy that loses, maybe going to the back of the tree. But then you actually look at the matchups that are being made. I mean, we know that Jorge and Nate too is being spoken about. You look at Leon Edwards. He hasn't got a fight right now. Does he fight Wonderboy? Does he fight somebody else? The winner of this, coming off the back of maybe recent losses to the champion, does it propel them straight back into a title fight, or do you think maybe towards an eliminator for that title shot once again?
I mean, this certainly feels like a title eliminator just based on the two individuals involved. But what I would say is that, coming out of this one with a win on Colby's side, I think he can absolutely make an argument for the Kamaru Usman fight. Unfortunately for our friend Mark Goddard, he's going to be hearing about it again, and Colby will bring back that fight shouldn't have been stopped, etc., etc. But there is a narrative there that Colby can lean on. For Tyron Woodley, I don't think so much. To be honest, I think a win here puts both of these guys in a very difficult situation in the division, because I think both of them are probably going to need another win. Colby maybe can talk himself into a title fight, but I think Tyron's going to need at least one more win before he gets in there and fights, whoever's holding the belt. It would probably help him out if it wasn't Usman holding the belt, but who knows what's going to happen with that. But then you've got, killers waiting in the wings, the likes of Leon Edwards, who is just waiting for one of these guys to be ready for an opportunity to face, and he's going to jump at it. And the thing is with the welterweight division, you could look down this list. You can go into the between 10 and 15, and you can find some guys that are going to be problematic. Like, these guys are mainly holding ground in this contest. If either of them lose, they slide a long way down. Colby's got the chat to get him back, but Tyron, with his age and with his lack of marketability in recent fights, I think he's going to need another big win after this one as well.
You speak about some of them other killers in the welterweight division. Now, Dan, just chill for 1 second, because me and Nick are going to absolutely hype the living daylights out of this train that is running through the welterweight division right now. I'll tell you something, he's made an awful amount of noise. He's impressed Dana White, and he's managed to get himself on this card. We're all excited about that. And if he comes through this, he's back on Fight Island once again with another stellar fight. And if he comes through both of those, who knows? In about 3 fights' time, we might be talking about this guy challenging for the welterweight title. We are, of course, referring to Khamzat Chimaev. He's taking on Gerald Meerschaert. First of all, Nick, what do you make of the UFC's decision not only to book him one, but to book him 2 fights back to back?
I think it's mental, and it just shows how big a potential superstar this guy is, and Dana White's all over it. And, in all my time covering UFC, I've never known anyone to get double booked in this manner, so publicly double booked as well. People to go, right, he's fighting then, and he's definitely going to be fighting then as well. And there's the opponent he's going to fight against, basically the guy who's a gatekeeper to the top 10. It's mental. But Dana kind of feels what we all feel. We've only seen a few, literally minutes of this guy inside the octagon so far. But what we have seen is absolutely unadulterated striking power. He's a finisher, he's a predator, and guess what? He can talk as well. So in the time, listen, he's only been in the UFC for 10 days in terms of competition, 2 quick wins. But since then, he's called out Masvidal, he's called out the Diaz brothers to fight them on the same night. He's called out Conor McGregor. He's literally called out all the big names in the welterweight division and quite a few in the middleweight division as well. He's prepared to take on anyone, fight anybody. You know, Dana gets it, man. This is a business. It's about finding diamonds in the rough. And this guy is absolutely got the potential to be a superstar. I'm so excited about seeing him again. Take my money, as fans would say. Take my money. Get him on every card every week, because at the moment, he's unmissable TV.
Dan, me and Nick are firmly on the Chimaev train, right? After his performances on Fight Island. But let's have a bit of sense right now. Phillips, McKee were the two opponents that he fought on Fight Island. He outstruck them 192 to 2 shots or something. It was ridiculous. Pick them up, dump them on the backside, and give them a good hiding. No disrespect to those two gentlemen, but they are a different level of opponent to the guys that we're talking about right now. Gerald Meerschaert, and if he comes through the Meerschaert fight, Demian Maia, that'll be a sensational test to see where this guy really is at.
It's going to be a hell of a test, but both fights, both weight classes as well. And this is what's interesting about Khamzat. I mean, we look at other fighters and we go, oh, they're great in this weight class, but potentially at middleweight, potentially at lightweight. You know, we're always looking at moving a fighter around. Khamzat's playing out both weight classes at the same time. He is a welterweight and a middleweight in the UFC. He's got 1 win in each weight class. He's about to try and pick up 2 more wins, 1 in each weight class. I mean, he could kind of pick and choose which direction he goes. And if I look at the guys he's got, obviously, you know, John Phillips is a big puncher. He threw 1 kick, shot in and took him down and just dominated him on the floor. Reese McKee's a long-range striker with good submissions, but just wasn't able to do anything in that fight at all. So on both sides, you've got very similar styles coming at him, but both of them kind of are out of their element when they're being controlled on the floor. The difference with these two fighters coming up, Meerschaert's got lots and lots of fights, lots of experience, lots of submissions on his record. He does find himself in bad positions getting ground and pounded, but he has shown toughness and durability that gets him through into the 3rd round when his opponent feels like they're running away with it, and then he'll slap on a submission. We've seen that a few times. Demian Maia, who controls Demian Maia on the floor? Remember what he did to Gunnar Nelson? Remember what he did to Masvidal? That's the real test for him, because not only is he fighting at welterweight, which I think is more of his natural weight class, but he's fighting way up the rankings. Meerschaert's a tough test for him, but it's a tough test for him because he's a good grappler and he's a middleweight. Demian Maia is a tough test for him because he's Demian Maia, because he's an excellent grappler. So although Meerschaert's going to be a very tough test to come through, I kind of feel like he's a bit tailor-made for Khamzat, whereas on the other side, waiting for him with Demian Maia, how do you keep that guy off your back? Because we've not seen anybody else do it yet.
Can we talk about the psychology from Meerschaert's point of view? He's been booked to fight Khamzat, and they've already kind of, in a way, booking a second fight, overlooked him. They think that Khamzat's going to come through Meerschaert. How does he approach this? He's going to be coming in there full of emotion, isn't he?
I'd be furious. I would be furious because my intention then would be to go in there and to make sure he can't step in and fight Demian Maia. That would be my whole point of that fight.
Absolutely.
Like, I want to cut him. I want to damage him. I want to do something. Even if I don't beat him, I want to stop him moving on to the next fight like I was nothing. And there's going to be some animosity coming from Meerschaert, because that's the kind of mentality that he has. He does talk. He does get inside people's heads, but he also likes to let them work a little bit as well. I watched his fight against Trevin Giles the other day. I mean, he was given positions in that fight, which he can't do in this fight against Khamzat. I think the fact that Khamzat's also been booked to face Demian Maia, it's going to fire him up. It's going to take away that relaxed, I'll let him pass to side control. I'll let him take my back. If Meerschaert comes in on his game and he's pushing from the first bell, that's a tough test for Khamzat, because Meerschaert's got a good ground game, but the need or the animosity coming into this because Khamzat's been double booked, I think that's going to spur Meerschaert on.
Nick, do you know what adds to it as well? This is taking place at the Apex. It's the smaller octagon. He's going to be like a rash, isn't he?
He is, absolutely. Again, I just can't wait to see this guy fight again. I can't get enough of him at the moment, because he has hit the ground absolutely running so quick in the UFC, probably made a bigger impact than anybody we've seen before. And he's utterly fearless. And all the noises coming out of Stockholm are that we've only seen 1% of this guy's potential. He's got so much more in his locker. Listen, I'm sure you guys seen it as well. On social media this week, there was video of him dropping Alex Gustafsson with a body kick. Listen, people said it was a low blow. I'm happy to say it was a liver shot. I am totally on board with Khamzat. This guy is going right to the top, and we're all going to be able to say, I remember when he made his UFC debut. Let's not put the blockers on. I know Dan's trying to, speak some sense there, but I can see between the words. Dan's on board. Dan
I'm
is
buzzing.
absolutely on board with this guy. Choo-choo! We're going for the title, baby.
If nobody's watched BT Sport Open Map before, you now know everybody's roles, right? I just start the plane, Dan speaks the sense, and there's your hype guy. If you're not hyped after listening to him speak in there, you're never going to be hyped. Now you know about Khamzat Chimaev. It's going to be sensational on this card going down on September the 19th, of which you will be able to catch on BT Sport. But that's not it. We've spoke about only 2 fights. This card is absolutely jacked to the nines. We've got Cowboy on here taking on NIKO Price. And I don't know about you, Dan, but Cowboy, obviously, at the start of the year, he had that big Conor McGregor fight, his big moment. And maybe he froze at that time and he was blown away in 40-odd seconds against Conor. And that's easy to do. A lot of people have done that in the past. But I thought his last performance, his return performance, I thought he was brilliant. The way that he dealt with it, the way that he came out. Maybe the lack of fans helped him with his nerves that he spoke about on many occasions when he stepped into the octagon. I thought he was very unfortunate not to get his hand raised that night. And I know that it's a skid that he's coming into this fight, but I don't actually look at his last one as a skid because I thought his performance was really good.
Yeah, it was good. And I do agree. I do think he benefited from being at the apex. I think we're all aware at this point in Cowboy's career that everything hinges on his psychology. You know, if Cowboy comes in on his game, you know, feeling confident, feeling like he can beat the guy, feeling like he's well prepared for it, he out-techniques people in every range. And that's the thing with this fight against NIKO Price. NIKO's a good fighter. He's fundamentally sound. It's quite rudimentary, his striking skills, but he strikes with intention and he strikes with a range that can crack Cowboy and get him backed up. There's no doubt, though, that Cowboy's the better fighter out of the two. It just all hinges on his psychology. And that really is the big question around Cowboy. And unfortunately for Cowboy, because of who he is and the name that he's got, and because he'll fight anybody at any moment, he's one of the special cards in the deck. You know, if you look down the UFC roster, like Cowboy, he might not be a Masvidal or a McGregor, but he's second tier. He doesn't get easy fights, whether they're top 15 or not. No matter what weight class he's in, he's always getting difficult fights. And I think that, you know, although technically, you know, NIKO Price might not be quite as good as some of the fighters that Cowboy's faced, he's still got the potential to derail Cowboy based on his psychology, based on this skid, based on the fact that, you know, there's a tipping point in Cowboy's fights where Cowboy just never finds his way back in. And NIKO Price is an awkward, enthusiastic fighter that does like to get mixed up in exchanges. Cowboy gets clipped in one of those. NIKO Price is not going to let him off the hook. It's a tough fight for Cowboy, but it's a fight that Cowboy should win every day of the week in the gym. That's the difference, in the gym.
Yeah, good shout. And Nick, based on what Dan's just said there, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking someone's getting a check here. This has got performance of the night written all over it because NIKO Price doesn't go the distance and we know what Cowboy's all about. I think it's going to be a cracker. Yeah,
absolutely. As you say, NIKO Price never ever been a distance in the UFC, win, lose or draw, you know. So, well, he obviously didn't draw, but in terms of this fight with NIKO, as Dan was saying there, though, the issue you've got for Cowboy is that guy, isn't he? He's that name. He's future Hall of Fame, you know, and he'll take any fight, anywhere, anyhow, and that's why we love him. The issue he will always have is, unless it's a Conor McGregor or an Anthony Pettis where he absolutely raised his game, I think Cowboy accepts these fights without even knowing who the other opponent is, without even knowing, with all due respect to NIKO Price, but he kind of done a similar thing with Darren Till. You know, he does it all the time. He takes these fights before he even asks the UFC who's going to be in the opposite corner. The difference is, the opposite corner guy, Cowboy's the biggest name on their record. Cowboy's Cup final day. Cowboy for NIKO Price is the chance to add a legend to his resume and to jump his career forward, just like it was with Till, just like it has been for so many others. So you get these young, hungry guys who have got ability, but because they're fighting Cowboy, boy, do they turn up. No stone is left unturned. They're focused. They're in the dressing room. They're terrified. They get inside the octagon. They look across at a living legend and they think, oh my goodness, I've got to be on it now. Where Cowboy goes, we're back, baby, let's have a go, and then we'll have a beer afterwards. And I think that takes a little bit away from his game, and it adds so much to his opponent's game as well. These names, the likes of NIKO Price, these guys who are fighting to really make a name for themselves, build their careers in their sport, Cowboy is the ultimate target. And I just think that always gives them the extra incentive. I fear for Cowboy here. As you say, 4-fight skid as well. As bad as the last one was, he was great against that fight against Pettis. He probably should have won it. But 4 losses on a skid, age 37, losing to habit. It's going to be a tough habit to break.
Also on this card, we got Johnny Walker taking on Ryan Spann. Now, for those that have been watching this show here on Open Mat, if you'd have watched one maybe 2 years ago, all the chat that we've just done about Khamzat Chimaev, we would have done it about Johnny Walker. We'd have been going crazy. We'd have been hyping this guy up. However, this is mixed martial arts. This is the UFC. There are no easy fights, and sometimes those trains do get derailed. And that's what happened to Johnny Walker. He's lost his last 2. But he's changed his camp up. He's moved over to Ireland. He's training with John Kavanagh at SBG. Dan, what do you make of that move from Johnny?
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad move at all. He's been a Ronin for many, many years. Like, I remember going up to teach a seminar in a gym in Aberdeen, which you wouldn't expect any pros to be coming out of just purely because of the size of it. And Johnny Walker had been there training. Like, he's moving around all the time. I think maybe that might be a part of the problem. He's definitely a great athlete. He's definitely got some great skills, but the thing that he seems to be lacking is a foundation. And when we see him, go flying across the octagon and knock guys out like, was it Misha Cerrone with the knee? And, there's been a couple of really big knockouts earlier on in his career. Although they look spectacular and they go viral straight away and everyone's talking about him, we don't see the rest of his game. And when we start seeing him under pressure like we have done recently, that's when we start seeing all the facets of his game that need fleshing out still, because he is still early in his career. I mean, we were talking about him being a potential light heavyweight champion at one point. There's a lot of work to do before he gets to that stage. And there's no doubt that he's got the creativity and the power to hurt everybody that he fights. It's what does he fall back upon when that doesn't work, like it didn't in his last fight and like it didn't against Corey. I think with John Kavanagh, someone that's very strategic and someone that doesn't like people getting into a brawl, that's the kind of person that can put a game plan together and give him the techniques and the ability to have a backup plan if something doesn't start going his way. I still think Johnny Walker is, he is a contender in this division, but, you rise quickly and you fall quickly in the UFC. I mean, I experienced it myself. Clawing yourself back into a position where you can compete is about doing the basics, the foundation work. And I think SBG can do that.
He's got a real opportunity here. I mean, both of these guys have, haven't they, Nick? Johnny Walker and Ryan Spann, to make a bit of a statement, because the following week, obviously this is all taking place on September the 19th, the following week, the vacant title is up for grabs. So it's always nice to make a statement just before the big boys go at it for the gold.
Absolutely, of course it is, and Dan's exactly right. I think there was a real time there when Johnny Walker looked like he'd be absolutely in the mix, and right now he's pretty far away from that. I think this is a horrible fight for him as well. I really like Ryan Spann and what we've seen so far in the UFC. He got through to the final of Dana White's Contender Series, and he was a massive favourite in that final. And we were already talking about what kind of impact he could have inside the octagon. And then he goes and surprisingly gets stopped. I think it was in the first round against Carl Robertson, and went away. But since then, he's had 8 straight wins, including, of course, coming into the UFC and really hit the ground running. I just really like this guy. I think he's got so much ability. He's a very well-rounded fighter. He hasn't got the unpredictability, of course, of Johnny Walker. Very few fighters actually have. But I like the work that he does. He gets the job done, Ryan Spann, and I think he's more than capable here. And I kind of feel for Johnny Walker. And I'm like, Dan, until this guy finds a home, we'll never get the best of him. If he's going to jump here, there, and everywhere. There was a time when he was based in, I know when he first got into the UFC, he was based in Southampton. Then he was back over in Brazil. Then he was in the US. Now he's over in Ireland. This is a guy that just needs to put his roots down, put his beliefs in his coaching team and a group of training partners that they can actually take him to the very next level, because undoubtedly Johnny Walker's got the 2 ingredients that you needed to become a UFC superstar. He's a finisher, and he's got personality and bags of it. And that's what we love inside mixed martial arts. That's what our stars are fundamentally built on. But listen, Ryan Spann doesn't care about Johnny Walker's potential right now. He just sees Johnny Walker as being a name in the top 15 and a way for him to get inside the title picture. So for me, this is a real 50-50 fight. And, if I was a better man, I'd probably go with Spann right now.
Let's talk Kevin Holland against UK's own Darren Stewart. In the past, I've had to apologise to Darren because when I've spoke about British mixed martial artists, I kind of leave his name till further down the list. But if you go off recent performances, recent attitudes as well to performances, Darren's been absolutely bang on. And to get a submission victory, Dan, last time out, maybe raised a few eyebrows and opened a few eyes and ears to other people in the UFC of how far this guy can go. Kevin Holland, obviously, people loving him at the moment with his attitude as well towards fighting. Both of these guys coming off the back of performance of the night, performances on the same card. It's the perfect fight at the perfect time for both guys. And if Darren can come through this, man, that's a big statement.
It is a big statement, and it's I think coming off a submission win as well is gonna do a lot for people's confidence for him going into this one because Kevin's a great grappler. I think he's a brown belt, maybe even got his black belt, and I think he got it off. Is it Terrell? The guy that used to fight in the UFC, Dave Terrell. Like he's got grappling skills from an MMA fighter, which might not mean much to too many people, but if you're going to a straight jiu-jitsu guy and you're learning gi jiu-jitsu, you still having to apply that to MMA yourself. Whereas if you're learning your jiu-jitsu from a guy that stepped into the UFC, you can kind of guess it's been tailored somewhat to mixed martial arts, to no gi. Darren Stewart is a powerful puncher, a very, very strong individual. And that's going to be the challenge for Holland here, is going to be trying to get a hold of him and control him. I expect Darren Stewart to be the stronger fighter in here. The challenge is watching the way that Kevin Holland moves when he's comfortable, when he's relaxed, when the fight's going his way. Because he's cruising, he's playing, he's hitting you with long range punches. Then he's disappeared before you're landing anything. And unfortunately for Darren Stewart, if he keeps getting tagged with a light jab, it's not going to hurt him necessarily, but it's definitely going to frustrate him. Then he goes wading forward with those big punches, and then he finds himself in a grappling range with a good brown belt. I think he needs to stay on his game in this one. I think he needs to be very patient, because if he gets too overzealous, if he starts chasing him, he's going to run into a choke or a bunch of punches that are going to frustrate him even more. He needs to be very strategic. And I think... the thing is, we saw that loss against Bartosz Verbinski, and I think that's how we see Darren Stewart losing these fights. And I don't think that Kevin Holland can do that to him. I don't think he can dominate him on the floor and just basically tie him up and beat him up. I think Holland's much more of an opportunistic fighter. He's got long-range stinging strikes and he's got good submissions. But that facet in between where he controls Darren Stewart, I think that's what he's lacking. And I think that's how Darren Stewart stays in this fight.
Nick, I think Dan's just nailed everything there. But when you've got the moniker the dentist, a lot of fight fans look at that he is just about the power punches. But that performance last time out when he sunk in that guillotine, that's probably his most satisfying victories to date in the UFC.
Absolutely. Certainly satisfying for his jiu-jitsu coach as well. He must have been absolutely over the moon with that performance. What I like about the dentist is he's finally broke the ranks of what most UK fighters kind of fall into, and that's basically just waiting for the UFC to do events in Europe, to do the annual pilgrimage to the UK. That was Darren Stewart's wheel as well. He was locked in that, and right now, of course, we're seeing UK fighters pretty much restricted to competing over in Abu Dhabi. Whereas Kevin, he's broke out of that, hasn't he? Darren Stewart, he's part of the Apex kind of setup. He's competing in the US. He's kind of ploughing his own road, which is great for him because it's helping him really break free. And let's bin the Verbinski defeat for now, because we talked about that in the build up to it as well. Fighting on a Cage Warriors card just to stay active over here in the UK because of lockdown restrictions in the US. They just wanted to get some work. Fighting a guy from a different weight division on a platform that you left behind many years ago. It always felt like a bad setup for Darren Stewart, and it played out that way as well. But if we bin that for now, the guy's on a 3-fight winning run in the UFC, the last of which was a submission victory. His confidence should be through the roof right now. And yes, I think Kevin Holland's very capable in every department, but I love this fight for Darren Stewart. It's a fight he can easily win. It's a fight he can look good winning as well. And keep that momentum going, keep that Apex run results. He's just had a big win in Las Vegas in this small octagon in the Apex. If he can keep that momentum going, I'll tell you what, 2021 could be huge for the dentist.
It's an absolutely stacked card, the final one at the Apex before we all jet off to Fight Island, where we see UFC 253 kick us all off with Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. But we're not just done there. I mean, we've spoke about, 4 or 5 fights there, and there's a couple of others to get stuck into. So, lads, I'm going to allow you to pick one from the rest. Nick, I'll come to you first. Where are you going? Which fight or fighter is interesting you the most out of the rest of the fighters available on this card?
Yeah, as you said, it's absolutely stacked, this card. Loads of interest there. But I've got to go back to one of my old favourites, Mirsad Bektic, because there was a time, talk about us getting excited about Johnny Walker in the past. My goodness, we were excited about Mirsad just a couple of years ago and his potential in the UFC. He was on an incredible winning run. He looked like he had everything. And then, he was a couple of rounds up against Darren Elkins, you'll remember. And then just down the stretch, Elkins basically threw a Hail Mary shot and it landed right on Mirsad's chin. And since then, he came back with a couple of wins, but he's had a couple of losses since. He's also moved from ATT to various other gyms. He's currently a TriStar in Montreal with Firas Zahabi. This is a guy, again, that's just trying to find his place in the world, trying to find his very best. But I truly believe once we get Mirsad happy, once we get him busy again, get his mind in the right place, I truly believe Bektic can go on a run in the UFC and real put a title challenge together. So my eyes are all on him. He's welcoming a Gregario, who's very new to the UFC in this fight, which is a fight he can easily win and look good winning. So yeah, my tip for a potential bonus is Mirsad Bektic. Let's get it back on track and see how far this guy can actually go.
Good shout. Dan, who are you keeping an eye on?
I'm excited for the strawweight female fight with Mackenzie Dern and Randa Marcos, because I think Randa Marcos she's very, very dedicated. She's very passionate about her career in mixed martial arts. She's just inconsistent in the octagon, and she's coming off a loss to Heber. She's up and down. She just needs to put a couple of wins together, and this is a good opportunity because everyone knows the name Mackenzie Dern. Everyone knows what she brings to the table. But if you look at these two fighters, if you get your old top trumps out and you start dividing these stats up, for the 100 points that Mackenzie Dern's got on the ground, I would say Randa Marcos has got sort of maybe 50 or 60 points. But what Mackenzie Dern's lacking on the feet, Randa Marcos has. So this is much more about Randa Marcos being the mixed martial arts fighter, dealing with a strong jiu-jitsu player who has a quite clear game plan of get this fight to the floor and submit her. Randa Marcos, this is a good fight for her, a winnable fight for her. If she can keep this at range, keep tagging Mackenzie Dern, deny all those takedown attempts, and make this an MMA fight, I think it's going to be a good scrap. But obviously Mackenzie Dern's submission skills are pretty impressive. So that's the fight I'm looking forward to.
Yeah,
action-packed. Should be a cracking night. Should be UFC a really good night.
UFC top trumps. I love it. UFC top trumps, Dan.
It's coming, mate. It's coming. We're working on it.
Saturday night, September 19th. That's when it all goes down. It's the 11th one from the Apex. UFC Vegas, with the cherry on top of the cake being Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley. We'll catch you next time.